mean, that was an emotional episode of Hard Knocks, to be honest with you. I kind of want to cry right now, guys. Lot to get to, a lot of notes. We are here tonight, and we will be with you for at least the next hour, recapping what we just watched on Max, and we are powered by ComEd tonight. I'll just start with my instant reaction because I feel like a lot of us are gonna be on the same page here. But that Ian Wheeler stuff was hard to watch, man. That is as raw as it gets in the NFL. Guys fighting for their jobs. You got the Hard Knocks cameras rolling because they already had the storyline set up, right? Like, this is a guy who's fighting for his job. If there's any criticism I have of Hard Knocks over the years, it's kind of like it becomes a very cookie cutter at the end of each season. It's kind of the same storyline. It's just you change the characters. And, you got his mom mic'd up and he's mic'd up, and you set it up with Chad Morton just on his ass constantly. And then it ends the way it did, which we all knew was coming because we heard the news over the weekend that he tore his ACL in that game. But, HBO didn't know that when they mic'd everyone up going into that game. And so to see that, like, his mom get the text in the middle of the game, and that's the longest hug I've ever seen. I lost my mom a long time ago. It just made me want to hug my mom so bad. That was hard to watch, guys. I'm not even gonna lie. I got emotional watching it.
Yeah, I think that was definitely tough to watch because I was in his shoes back in college when I tore my ACL, and I remember I was coming out that year projected as a potential first-round pick, and I just remember they called. My parents tell the story. They called. It was at the Alamo Bowl. We played Chase Daniel, Jeremy Maclin. Last 2 minutes of the game, I go to get my third sack. I get pulled from behind. I'm on the turf. And my parents said, yeah, they called them and said, hey, it's not good. You got to come down. And I just remember the trainers telling me after doing the ACL test, like, you tore your ACL. I thought it was a bad dream. I just started crying. I remember I hugged my parents, and it was just, it felt like a bad dream. And I know where he was, and he had such a great training camp, and he was being such a likable guy that everybody, rallied behind it. He had immense talent and speed, and it's just like in this league, in general in football, right? You have limited opportunities to be able to capitalize on it, and it's unfortunate. Hopefully, we'll see him again. We just don't know. I mean, there's so many talented people in this league. I hope it's not the last we see of him. But even the Colbert piece, right, about him almost losing his life. I mean, just very emotional episode in general, and how thankful he is for every day. And I think things like that, like, put things in perspective when we're, dealing about our regular, oh, this sucks or that sucks. It's all about perspective and kind of how you live your life and what you're grateful for. And I think we all have to stop, take a breath, and sometimes just be thankful for what we all have.
No, yeah. I mean, perfectly said there, Woot. And, even when Ian's mom's like, why are you limping? Like, that got me right there. Like, you can hear it in her voice as Ian Wheeler's going to the sideline. Like, that was tough to see. But, I really like the perspective that, Adrian Colbert just kind of goes about his everyday life, not having the shoes on, staying grounded and kind of getting the energy from the earth and, showing the bike ride to Hallis Hall that he takes to get to practice. Like, you don't hear about those stories other than like a Hard Knocks, a setting like this. So it was good to kind of highlight those things. And then he made a couple of really good plays in that Chiefs game, breaking up the pass that would have, it saved a touchdown and then set up Reddy Stewart for the pick six by coming off the edge. Like, again, Adrian Colbert, we know his fate because we know the roster, but he did make it, I think, tough on the coaching staff because of the game that he played. But yeah, definitely two heartfelt kind of characters to watch in this episode of Hard Knocks.
Yeah, we had Ian Wheeler on over the summer, and you could see just how thoughtful of a young man that he is, and someone that's easy to root for, on a team that has a lot of different personalities, and you see the camaraderie of this Chicago Bears team coming together here. But I've always been somebody, when I go to training camp, it's fun to see the big superstars, but training camp's all about those guys at the back end of the roster trying to make a spot. And it's fun to root for those guys because you see how bad they're working to get it. They're not getting anything. You saw, what do you say, $7,500 is what he got as a rookie bonus. Like, These guys are literally fighting for their livelihood. You know, the other guys at the top of the roster, they're going to be all right. Their generations of their family ahead are going to be all right. He's fighting to have that luxury. He doesn't have it yet. So for all the people I used to work with, old timers, they're playing the NFL, you know, boo-hoo. Well, it's not like that that's not how it works for everybody in the NFL. Not everybody's, you know, Caleb Williams and Keenan Allen, right? So Ian Wheeler, you know, is right on the precipice of making the team potentially. And you see how it all is gone in a second. And it's as simple as a helmet to the knee. It wasn't like we've seen worse, you know, hits to the knee, but that's all it takes, you know. And my wife was sitting with me and she was like, wow, I can't believe he tore his ACL. And I'm like, well, helmet on knee, you know, your foot's planted. And personally, you know, we've been talking about it here on the show. I just had ACL surgery here 2 days or Friday. I've lost track of my days now on Friday. And I would have never imagined how much it was going to hurt afterwards. And in fact, I'm glad no one told me because it's brutal and the pain there's no escaping that pain. It is brutal and it's relentless. It just you have to just live with it and learn to. Now I just had my first physical therapy session today and you slowly work your way back. I have no feeling on the entire front of my knee and halfway down my leg. And I asked them, I go, when am I going to get feeling back? Assuming they were going to say like 2 weeks. And they said about 6 months. And I couldn't believe it. I could not believe that. That was the answer to that. So, you know, like you said, you don't take these things for granted. You appreciate what you have. And, you know, I'm thankful it wasn't worse. You know, I'm sure Ian is trying to look on the positive side of things. If you watch his interview with us, I think he's that type of person that's going to try to find the positives from this. And that's what he said to Ryan Poles. I'm going to use this as a redshirt year and work on things mentally. But man, yeah, to your guys' point, that was just a gut-wrenching moment. But I also think is what makes this show special and why going to training camp for me is always something I appreciated, because you go beyond the fantasy football lineup. You go beyond, you know, the stats and what you see on TV, and you start rooting for the human beings and see that they have families at camp that come that are, you know, it means a lot to them on a level that I think a lot of fans just don't appreciate, because we all just want to see the Bears win a Super Bowl. And so you got to see that on full display. And I think that's going to make, if it wasn't for Hard Knocks, would Chicago Bears Nation really rally around him, not knowing the full extent of the story. And now I think when he comes to camp next year, he's going to be a fan favorite, because we all know what he just went through and what he's going to go through here over the next 12 months.
Yeah, I was very happy that they showed that scene with Ryan Poles in his office, because I've always kind of imagined how those conversations go. But in this case was already thinking about it, like understanding. To me, Ian Wheeler was somebody that, had he not gotten hurt, was going to get cut anyway. Maybe ended up back on the practice squad, which would have been, I mean, obviously better than this outcome, because you still get to practice, you'd still get to develop all those things. But you never know. I mean, you're never safe on the practice squad. Maybe you get claimed somewhere else and it's not as good of a fit. Like, guys, their careers just sort of deteriorate quickly because of circumstance sometime. So if there was one silver lining here, it was that, you know, I somewhat joked the other day, there's two guys that I know tore their ACLs that'll be at training camp next year, and that's Ian Wheeler and Greg Braggs Jr. They'll both be there. They're not going away. They're still going to be there next year. And that, I don't know, that would have been a guarantee otherwise. So it doesn't make you feel any better about it, but there is a silver lining to that at least. And so I'm glad they showed that scene between Poles and Wheeler to kind of like let the public understand some of those circumstances that go into that woot. Yeah,
I think at any time, you know, you have a coach like Poles, man, he really cares about the guys, and you could tell that. It's refreshing because a lot of times, like GMs and not to name drop or diss anybody, but you know, there were some people that were GMs. Phil Emery, I don't really know, to be honest. I mean, I'm talking negatively. I don't know if he really cared about the guys like Poles does. I'm just being honest and not trying to knock him, but I think there's something refreshing about this, because football is a business, right? At the end of the day, it is a business like any other job out there, but it's been known for being cutthroat. So the way he operates, the way he does stuff, like the Wheeler example, or even Justin Fields, right? He probably could have got a better pick for him, but he wanted him to be in a situation that was better for him. So I think that's really refreshing to have a guy to be like, you know what? I want what's best for my players, whether or not they're going to be here or not. I want to do best by them. I want the best for them. And Poles seems like an awesome guy. The way the moves that he's starting to stack up and how he's building this team and the players around it, I think it's the mark of hopefully what can be a dynasty here in Chicago. That's really what I'm hoping.
And real quick,
go ahead.
Real quick though, Nick. I mean, to your point on that, having covered the entire time Phil Emery was the GM, like, let's be honest, he treated the players like they were just chess pieces. Just these little magnets I have in front of me right now on the board. Like, and that's about as important as some of the guys were. I mean, one of the biggest travesties was how the end of Brian Urlacher's time with the Bears ended with an email that went out. Like, that's ridiculous. You're talking about one of the best players that's ever played for the franchise, and that just type of stuff cannot happen. And so I think we already sort of knew that about Ryan Poles without Hard Knocks, but to see it on Hard Knocks, that you got a GM who's preaching what is constantly said in the building too. And like the stuff he said on Hoge and John's last week, that it's all about people, that in any workplace, like it's all about the people you're working with. That is very, very refreshing. And that might sound maybe somewhat naive in football a little bit, but I think when you start to build that and you see Woot, like you played for Lovie Smith, you saw like how that culture started coming together because it was people treating people like people. Then you have a level of respect and you start to fight for each other more and more, right?
Exactly. And I think there's a way to still treat it like a business, but be a person, right? Show compassion, show that you care for people. And I just think too many times throughout the league, you just see so many people, like you said, treating these players like chess pieces. At the end of the day, right, this is a small portion of our life, right? Playing in the NFL, whether or not you play for 1 year, you play for 15 years, you play for 20, right? We're all a part of that brotherhood. And I think everybody wants the same thing, right? They want to live out their childhood dream. They want to have a great experience. They want to play with great teammates. Everybody wants to win a Super Bowl. So my thing is just like this: lift everybody up, encourage people. And regardless of how you feel about that person as a player, right, at the end of the day, I think you just should want what's best. And that always doesn't happen because you've seen it left and right. And even like the Urlacher thing, the fact that they couldn't give him like, what was it, like $500,000 or $1 million extra for arguably one of the greatest linebackers to ever play the game, the face of the franchise, the most recognizable linebacker in the NFL history. You couldn't meet him halfway and just say, listen, you know what? Maybe I don't think you're worth this, but hey, listen, you've done so much for this organization. You've done so much for football. Here, Brian, let's ride you off into the sunset. It's your last go around. Let's have this historic year with you. But he couldn't do that. And that's the part that's so, and literally that whole regime, you look at, we had the biggest turnover at any team. I think, what was it, like 2015 or 2016? Jay Cutler, Kyle Long, and Sherrick McManus were the only three people on the team. It was like the biggest turnover like we've seen in a while. So it's just, yeah, it was such a weird time, but I think everything happens for a reason. And now we're back to this point with Poles, and I think he's going to lead us to the promised land. Made a bunch of moves. And he keeps stacking up and he's building the culture. And the culture is what's going to make the difference to wins and losses. People say, no, you got to have – no, yes, you have to have talented people. You have to have great coaches. You have to have great players. But the chemistry, the camaraderie, that all translates to wins.
We all silly like the mayor.